text from Michael that said he had a conference call that ended at noon and he would be on his way. So I didn't know if you had thought much about the complaint procedure. I mean, I wrote some notes down of things that I think we should do. I mean, I can talk, and y'all can talk, and we can figure something out. Yeah. The city has a complaint form that's pretty standard, right? Because that's what I've seen Mr. Bemis's complaints on before. Is that a city form?
Well, we have had a form in the past that was that's now outdated. Okay. Because of its construction, the verbiage and stuff that's on it, it's outdated. Okay. I'd like to create whatever might be usable for what you guys feel like it would be usable for the telecom board based on what procedure that you establish for that. We don't have a specific form for someone to file a complaint about any one particular thing. But like I said, I'd like to get a form back out on the internet that would be something that somebody could say, if they wanted to communicate something to the telecom board, whether in terms of that would work for them. That would work for that.
Just some kind of feedback form.
Some kind of a feedback form. Then possibly a possible step in that could be, who would you want that form or any of that information to go to? Would it be the designated representative, you know, in this case me, I'm the liaison, city's liaison for the board, or would you want it to go directly to the director of communication or directly to the chair of the board? I think that's something that needs to be determined as to, and who's going to keep the records,
right?
Who's going to maintain and what records to be kept. You know, what do you want kept in terms of documenting a complaint, and what steps it is in whatever procedure that you establish, and where those, and who's responsible for follow-up, for example, if an action is taken. If it is brought, if the board brings it up and says, okay, we've had this complaint, here's the complaint, and the board considers it, and the board says this is what we're going to do or not do. Then whose responsibility is it to follow up from there to communicate back with that complainant what the board's decision was? Okay. So they have a follow-up communication. I thought it might be helpful. I didn't bring actually a copy of everything for everybody to look at, but I thought it might be helpful if I read through the procedure that's used for people to communicate comments and feedback for the public access channel that we established.
Oh, absolutely.
And can I jump in when you're looking for that? Okay. And this goes to, you asked a general question, how the city handles it. Essentially, it's the administration's view that when somebody has a complaint or suggestion, I mean, a lot of it's, what is a complaint? You know, we take, if any,
phone call.
Yeah, and we work to resolve that day. It's like with Freedom of Information Act requests. There's a form online, and I have found, you know, some people are like, that's an extra, making me jump through the hoop. Or, you make me go to that form, why can't you just give me what I need? Right. So it's an administrative position that we make it easy as possible for those who are requesting documents. If they don't say I'm invoking the Freedom of Information Act, we treat them as that. And we, you know, my job is, you know, with press calls, doing my job, but then press calls or Freedom of Information Act requests, I drop everything first priority, get that to them as soon as possible. With complaints, you know, what is a complaint? What is a suggestion? What is a compliment? We treat a lot of that, and they come in now. It could be Facebook, Twitter. It could be coming from a lot of different sources. That goes with sort of the open policy, you know, open government policies with the administration. Right. So what is a form, and are we talking about complaints or appeals? Okay. So.
The other thing to add on to that is that we field telephone calls from people all the time regarding different comments, feedback about what's going on in the operation of the channel and the different channels and things like that. And sometimes it's just somebody who wants to vent. And once they have had an opportunity to talk to somebody, that's enough. One of the things that I found being involved in another organization that had similar issues was they had a very formal complaint process. But telephone calls all the time from people about, oh, I don't like this, or so-and-so did that, or so-and-so, you know, this person did this, and I want to let somebody know about it. Okay. And that was fine up to that point. But the question was always asked after the conversation and listening, would you like to file a formal complaint? And once they file a formal complaint, that initiates the process.
Okay.
Of
I think that makes sense.
Of that. And
if you're requesting a specific action, you want to have a formal process for it.
Because then that gives, I've always felt like that gave the person who was calling in, that involved person, that sense of ownership. Mm-hmm. Yes, I want this to do this, and I will put it down. I will make it happen. Yes, I want to file a formal complaint. I want it to go through the process.
Okay.
And I want feedback. And that helps take those phone calls and emails and things that are just, I want somebody to listen to me and hear me, versus this is a formal, I want a process, I want it to be reviewed by the Telecom Board or this group or that group, and I want a response.
Okay.
This is the process that we established with the contract with the public access provider to create that formal complaint procedure that goes through that whole thing. And it first starts with if a complaint, and it could be verbally, a person could make a complaint verbally, but that whole question of, would you like to file a formal complaint and go through, and let's take it through the process? Yes, I would. Okay, let's talk about that. But then the first thing we do is we document it. The date, the time, the nature of the complaint, as many details as possible. Oh, Albert. That could facilitate the investigation of it. Okay. And then contact information for the complainant. At the very least, a name and address.
Okay.
Hopefully a telephone number and email address, but as much contact information so we can give something back to them. Then that complaint is immediately communicated to the managers of both channels, so they know what's going on. The manager of the public access channel, as soon as that formal process is initiated, get the information and immediately communicate to the person who's making the complaint that it's going to be investigated, and they will receive communication in no later than 3 days. Okay. And then a written response is returned to the person who is who's making the complaint, detailing the investigation and what steps were taken, what the response was, and the whys. Not just here's a statement saying, you know, your complaint was unfounded.
Right.
Go on. No, but a very detailed. We looked at this, and this is why. This is the determination, and this is why.
Okay.
And then all of the materials are kept. I mean, a file is kept of that complaint, and everything that was in, that was related to that is kept. And so then that can be brought forward to anything else or go forward with anything else. If somebody asks later, especially, after we get this process in place, we can say, because the Telecom Board is tasked with ensuring contract compliance, then the next logical step, if somebody is not satisfied with that they be communicated that if you're not satisfied, you're welcome to bring your complaint to the Telecommunications Board and speak with them about it. And so we'll always have that support material available for you if anything ever gets to that point. But that's it in a nutshell, and it's all about documentation and communication with the person.
Okay. And since we only meet once a month, our reaction time is never going to be as quick as yours or the public access channels. I mean, my rough notes that I've come up with over the last month thinking about this, if a formal complaint is lodged, and I guess we have to figure out what that is.
Yeah.
I mean, do we come up with a Telecommunications Board feedback form? I mean, I kind of like the complaint form that Mr. Bemis was using. Yeah.
And we can make some changes in that to bring it up to date. But
Uh-huh.
for example, it says things like cable administration on it,
Right.
which doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
And complaints specifically about, and we could get some information that direct the process, and once you determine how you want that process to go, what I'm hearing you say is we might want to put a step in there where maybe a complaint that is brought in from that goes directly to somebody in the city for an immediate response.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to look at this. Rest assured, we're looking at this, we're going to investigate it, and then we'll get back with you, and then here's the next steps that you can follow.
Does the city have an online form system that can accept things online?
We do have the application, the ability to do that, plus we have.
We don't have a complaint form online at this point in time for issues regarding telecommunications.
Right. No, but the infrastructure, so it can be created.
Yeah.
It's not hard. I mean,
No, I mean, we can do that. The way we've done it in the past, we can do it actually a couple different ways. The way it was on there was, it was a PDF that someone could print out and then complete and then send in or hand deliver. I wanted to upgrade it to, at the very least, a PDF form that you can fill out electronically and then email. But I would like to also see, I think what you're talking about, which is just an online form that you can fill out right there online and hit submit. And I would like to see it updated to that because that makes it a lot easier for the people out in the public.
I think that if we could do an online form with like InfoPath or anything, then it could just write back to a website that all of us would have access to, and the committee members could review it, write their notes on it at the same time the staff is writing their notes and attach the response to it, and then we just have it all in one place, and you guys don't have to shuffle paper around.
The question is, what kind of response are they looking for?
I mean,
And
we'll
if it's
probably
an
show-
immediate thing, then it's going to be up to the two of you, most likely, I guess. Like if it's a television issue, it's certainly going to be addressed by you immediately.
We like to address them immediately. I mean, the thing is, it doesn't look good for the city of Fayetteville, third largest city in the state, to have anybody wait for a month or 2 months. Or what if the board didn't have a quorum? And so what if it's 4 months and we could have taken care of whatever it was, immediately, such as, we don't like the font on the so-and-so, so-and-so.
Okay.
Well, I can give a call to IT and say, this is a really great suggestion, and then get that taken care of. Another thing, like I remember when I came on here, it was, and realize a lot of people might not know who to call, so their first stop is to call the mayor's office. And so I remember when I first got here, I had received a call and it dealt with public access. And of course, I said, well, I'm going to get this to public access and gave Sky Bloodlock's name and all that. But I remember, it was like my first week here, I went to Sky and said, oh, somebody had called, I'm referring this to you. But she did get upset because she said, I'm not going through the proper procedure. But I did have to explain that if a call comes in, I'm not going to tell somebody on the phone in the mayor's office, I'm not helping you.
Right.
I can at least tell, but we do have work out where we refer it to the right channels. But we like to help people.
Okay.
Are those all somewhere, like, all kept somewhere, everyone's responses?
For the past, because we have a lot of the old ones.
I don't have any files of complaints that were lodged except for what Mr. Bemis has given us in the past few months. I don't have.
What about the city's responses? How do you guys keep those? Like when you email like citizens back?
I would send out a group-wise email. We have it.
But it's not, you couldn't like search and go back and find, like if I wanted to find something that you wrote 2 years ago, would I be able to do that?
You would not be able to, she would be able to.
Okay.
Well, I wasn't here 2 years ago, but yeah, yeah. If it's still there, which we usually have, we have those boxes. We have some old.
I'm not sure
some
that,
access
I don't know what
complaints.
level I don't know what level they
Jim
got.
Bemis.
Nice to meet you.
And that's part of the problem.
Yeah, I've read a lot of your stuff.
Is that
It's a pleasure.
the process apparently has become, for whatever reason, somehow the process has become unclear. to people. And so if that's the case, and I think that's one of the things that Mr. Bemis has said several times, is that it just isn't clear. If I want to file a complaint, what do I do?
Right.
And where is it that I can see that process defined? And what I would like to do is once you guys get the process defined, how you want it, I'll publish it on the internet. Now, I will tell you that we're going through right now on accessfayetteville.org is we're revising all of the content for Fayetteville Government Television. All of those pages, we're revising all of that. We're having some problems. We actually ran into some technical problems with the content management system for our website. And we're working with IT very closely right now to get those issues resolved so we can do some things like add more assets like a new complaint form or an email feedback form. Right now that's broken, but it's in the process of getting fixed. By that time, I'm hoping that by the time that the Telecom Board says this is the process that we want to do, follow 1, 2, 3, 4, once that's done, then we can, and you guys say this is it, then I can take that, put it on the internet, and have it as part of all of that. So people.
What's the
see
CMS
that.
solution that the city did?
I'm sorry?
What's the name of the CMS software that the city's using?
Serena Collage. SERENA.
And some history here as well, and I'm sure Aubrey might be able to chime in here. I mean, it has always been, as I understand it, the purview of the Telecom Board too, to, if somebody came in that night of a board meeting and they said, I have a complaint, you know, they could be heard.
Right,
It's
sure.
not, oh, wait, did you file a form? So there is a question of how strict you want to be when you set a process up.
Okay. So I think, well,
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so we need to separate, I think, the appeals process versus the complaint process. So if you had a separate policy or procedure for dealing with an appeal that came from the channel station manager or the television station manager, or
I think there would be a little bit of difference there.
Mhm.
You have the issue of someone who brings a complaint regarding whatever issue it might be
Mhm.
directly to the Telecommunications Board, whether that's in person at a meeting or whether that's through a channel of communication via email,
Mhm.
telephone call, whomever. Establish who the point person is to take those complaints. But that's one procedure as to someone who wants to bring a complaint forward to the Telecom Board directly in whatever format. And then, like you said, now there's another procedure that we can establish, very similar to, but a little bit different, that if somebody made a complaint regarding the programming on the public access channel. They filed a formal complaint. They were written a letter that said this was the investigation, this was the findings of the city and the management, and in that letter, tell them if you desire, you can appeal this decision to the Telecommunications Board. Please contact so and so for it to be placed on the agenda, or however that is that you guys might want to do that. But yes,
once it gets to that point, the only difference is there's a record on an appeal, as opposed to like original jurisdiction of a complaint that's brought directly to the Telecom Board. So,
well, and then if it's brought directly to the Telecom Board, then we can actually pull it out. Let's say someone came to a meeting and said, nobody's ever seen it before. They just walked into the meeting, got to that point in the agenda, and they said, I would like to file a complaint. Okay, well, you guys are going to hear it, right? I mean, the board's going to hear it right then. But we keep minutes.
right.
And at that point, we can say a complaint has been initiated, a complaint has been filed, and follow whatever process that you establish past that point, because we have the minutes, we keep the record, and we can write, get their information and follow the procedure from that point on.
Okay. Well, I think it ought to be automatically added to the agenda if you get it in that time period, because it's supposed to be published 7 days prior to the meeting date. So if you get a complaint in writing, say, if that's what we decide on, it automatically gets added to the agenda. But if it's inside that 7-day period or brought that night, the board itself has to add it to the agenda to discuss it by motion.
And what I could do is, now what I have done in the past is anytime that we have gotten complaints, whether they have been, they have expressed any interest in going forward or anything, or basically, the only complaint that I've had recently was the one I talked about last month regarding some programming. But anyway, I've always brought it to your attention as a board. I've always brought it to your attention during the agenda item. We received these complaints in the past month. We've gotten this one, this one, this one. This is what the resolution was. And we've been conscientious about doing that.
How many do we average per year?
Complaints?
Formal? Yeah. Or phone calls or?
Well, like last month.
No,
Being the city?
being the city and the board both.
On what subject specifically?
Yeah, just
Around
related to
telecom stuff.
telecom. Jim, how many have you filed? Sorry.
No, that's fair. That's fair because there aren't many.
I would say probably in the last 12 months, I'm going to venture that we
3.
may have had
I think.
new complaints initiated, maybe 5. And all of those have been resolved immediately. In a lot of cases, it's going to be a situation where the staff of the public access operator has been very good about listening to people that call in and asking the question, would you like us to go forward with this? Our next step is to do this. Would you like to do that? No, I don't want to do that. The one I had last month from a lady talking about some programming that had been on the public access channel a couple of years prior, but it had been something that was produced at the facility.
But she received it by Facebook.
And she received somebody
private
brought it to her
person.
attention via Facebook. She watched the video. It was produced in public at the facility through public access. It was originally telecast a couple of years ago. Not been telecast probably in 18, 20 months. But I talked to her. I listened to her. She expressed her views. I explained to her the issue of free speech, First Amendment, first come, first served, and that we don't dictate the content. And I asked her, I said, ma'am, would you like me to follow up on this? Would you like me to do it? No, I'm fine. Thank you for talking to me. I appreciate it. I understand the situation. I understand. I don't like it, but I understand it. That's what she said. And I asked her specifically, and she specifically said no. But I jotted some notes down and shared that with you guys.
So
And if I was the main ones, it would be content, public access.
So that one didn't
seeing
get to-
body parts.
So is
Yeah,
this
okay.
procedure just designed around these 5 new requests we receive a year?
Which procedure is that?
The one we're talking about, procedure
Our-
2 that we just
okay.
talked about.
I think generally yes, because our reaction wasn't sufficient for
And there's no
the
written
complainant.
formal complaint procedure.
I think that right before
that's
you walked in, we were
what-
talking about that. There is no documented process of if somebody wants to file a complaint with the Telecommunications Board, this is what you do, step 1, step 2, step 3, et cetera.
Which we
Why
can then
can't we
put
s-
online and say,
Right, and put the formal process
Right.
this is what the
online,
board.
this is the complaint, or the comment,
I mean, it seems like this is pretty easy.
yeah.
Right.
This seems like a no-brainer.
I mean, I think we should take the framework of what you've got, we can look at it,
Modify it just
and
a little
modify it
bit.
just a little bit, and,
So who's the
The
point
public
person?
access one?
but now, the issue's gonna be who follows up with these in between those months, and I think that's
Right.
where,
Shouldn't the city assign should
Fritz
the
is
city assign someone? to
Yeah,
follow
it's
up?
actually in the Telecom Board ordinance that, yeah, it's me right now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't have to be. But it's in the
Right.
ordinance that the mayor designates a city staff member to assist the Telecom Board. Now, whoever that might be, whether it's the director of communications, whether it's the television center manager, whether it's somebody else. It's up to the mayor who that is. At this point in time, it's me, so I'm more.
Well, so I think, here are just my thoughts talking, on an appeal, the final decision is made more or less by you, right?
As to what?
If somebody were to complain about a television issue,
Well, let's take
It
this,
could be-
let's take the one we had last month, for example. I think that's a really good example. Ms. Beasley called in, and she spoke to me, she spoke to,
Mayor's office first.
she spoke to the mayor's office first. She was referred to the public access operator. They spoke with her, one of their staff members spoke. And she wasn't apparently she wasn't satisfied, so she called me, and I spoke with her.
In fact, the mayor's office requested another, in fact, I sent it to
follow-up,
both,
yeah.
I sent it to both, it came from the mayor's office, I sent it to public access, which is the proper procedure on that one. And then she still was not happy, and then I called Fritz and said, will you please also
Okay.
discuss it with me?
I asked her specifically if she wanted to go further, file a formal complaint. She said no. Well, let's say that she did say yes. I would have, at that point in time, I would have asked her for her contact information. How can I get you, would you want to, I can send you a form, or I can just take your information where you are right now. Reason being, that gives them an opportunity to actually write down their thoughts,
Right.
rather than them feeling like it was interpreted through someone they spoke with. So they get the opportunity to write it down, and I would have given her an opportunity to do it via a form or just send me an email with your thoughts on it. At that point in time, formal complaint process is initiated, and I would have told her at that point in time, you'll get response in 3 days.
Okay.
We would have conducted the investigation, formulated a response, and sent it back to her within that time frame. And at that point in time, also communicated, if you wish to continue to explore this complaint, I don't know the exact verbiage, but essentially, if you want to take it further, if you want to appeal this, you can appeal this by notifying me, and we will put it on the next agenda of the Telecommunications Board, and they will have all the information to consider it at their next meeting.
Okay, so that's the genesis of an appeal.
Is this right? The complaint comes in, it goes to the city responds over here with a copy to the subcommittee, and if they're not happy, it goes to the agenda before 7 days. Is that correct? If they're not happy with the city's response and they want to appeal again, then it's going to come to
It's
the
going to come to
agenda.
the board.
Okay.
Yeah.
So is this currently how the process works?
We do need to do better in terms of the agenda 7 days before.
Yes.
I would like to
Agreed.
add that.
That's how the process works, but it's not formalized.
Okay.
It's not documented.
Yeah.
And it's not documented in the administrative rules of the Telecom Board.
So what if we just take the word process and document it? I mean, is that?
I think that's a good question. One thing that I have analyzed, I guess this is the little attorney in me popping out, is one thing that we do, like Fritz made a good point, in public access, we write a letter or we send something that resolves it. One thing I think that has been missing from the Telecom Board is how do you know it was resolved? And those issues have come up. And we've had Kit Williams, Jason, our assistant city attorney, they've come in, they said, y'all are advisory.
Right.
The act of not acting upon it and saying we're not going to move this forward, we're not going to appeal it as a board to the
Right.
city council because that's where it goes next, right? Because as an advisory group, how are y'all letting the person know you've resolved it? And who writes that? And my advice is it's better not to be emotionally charged. You are speaking for the city. In fact, you are speaking for the city council in many ways. That you have a standard letter that might have it in there, and who puts that together. But I think a written resolution, so the person like Mr. Bemis, he can have this and he has something written. And he knows, okay, they've addressed it. He knows specifically how it's been addressed. And then if he's not happy with something that's written, maybe he can.
Yeah,
go
I think
elsewhere.
it should
Some
go like
resolution
as a
from the
memo
board.
or something to him with a copy to the board, and so
That's
he
a
can
step.
contact board members if he wants to before the next agenda, if he wants to, or if it's gonna go on the agenda. But I think the city has to decide how you're gonna do your internal workflow process. I mean, we don't know who the point person is, so it should just come to one person, you guys form it out wherever to respond to the citizen initially. And we have no idea.
Then on an appeal, I think you're the point, Fritz is the point person who,
But you guys know that.
you know,
We won't know that.
Actually, you do, because that's the way it always happens.
I mean, but
Public
I'm just
access
talking
or
about
paid
for any
provider.
general complaints, you guys are gonna know who the point of contact is at the city that can write the memo back, not the board.
Which we shouldn't, I mean, we do know.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's not really our concern at that point.
Transportation.
It's
Yeah,
our
I
concern
mean,
if it's.
That's what I'm
that
saying, is the
decision's
city
appealed.
should take care of that, I think. I
Mhm.
mean, we
Absolutely.
don't have to worry about any of that.
Responding back.
So just to restate that, if somebody either brings a complaint directly to you or is appealing a decision that was made by the center management regarding an issue, what I would do is I would document what action the board took. You're going to consider that, vote on it or not vote on it as to what action you're going to take. And I would document that as we do in the minutes and such, and then I would generate the response to the complainant, letting them know the telecommunications board, if they weren't, and I'll do it even if they were present at the meeting, the telecommunications board considered your complaint on X date, vote of, 5-2, they moved and passed, they passed a motion 5-2 to move your complaint formally to city council, or that they will take no action on this complaint, any further action on this complaint. You are welcome to contact your city alderman for further action if you so desire. Something to that effect. Is that what I'm?
Yeah, definitely.
Like at the
on
end
an
of the
appeal-
process.
on
And
a-
that would go in the file.
Uh-huh.
And so anytime someone wants to FOI any of those records, it's in the file, it's easily found
Uh-huh.
by date and name of the complainant, and it's always there. We can always go back and say, well,
Yeah, I think it would be great to have a central system because we need to make sure, it's consistent.
Yeah.
And that, I would love to be able to go look at the last 5 years of responses and complaints somewhere. I know they're not around, but I think one day we should get to a system where we can.
Don?
Through the chair, I don't know.
Oh, come on up. Yeah, come sit with us.
I just wanted to make a quick comment on two things. Whenever the staff takes an item to the council, there's always staff representation, and we make that staff recommendation based on one of two things. Either the staff's opinion, when we go to the board for the very first time, which is the first part of your complaint process, whether we deem it to be a valid complaint or not a valid complaint, which at point you're going to hear it. Once you act on it, then whatever you decide becomes the staff recommendation. So if we go to the council, at that point, let's just say you didn't agree with staff and you said, we think there's legitimacy to this complaint and we want to take this action to the city council as the body to resolve it, because they're the acting body, then it becomes the staff's recommendation that this should be this is the result. So whatever you decide is what will then become our opinion. So if you use the planning commission, you have a development in front of us, maybe we don't recommend it. The planning commission votes on it and they pass it 4-3. The staff recommendation now is recommended for approval when it goes to the council, if it requires council action. So here's my problem as the staff member to the council. Because Lindsley and Fritz are the staff member to you. So when they bring to me, if you have an item that you deem to be legitimate to go forward as a complaint, I want to have more documentation from you on, here was the complaint, this is why you upheld it, this is why you didn't act on it, whichever way it goes.
Okay.
Because once you make a decision, then we are going to be presenting your finding. If the appealing person continues on to the next step, which in this case is the council.
Okay.
So I don't want to just, I chose not to hear your complaint.
Okay.
I want to hear why you chose not to hear your complaint, almost your findings of fact, if you will. So when Kid is talking to the planning commission and he says, if you're going to turn this development down, here are the things. It's compatibility of neighborhood, it's traffic, it's, you have findings of fact. Whatever those findings are in your case about why you chose not to act needs to be a part of the motion. And what I hope that you will build into your process is, rather than an inaction, which is, I've gone back and watched, I guess, 3 of these. I think that the inaction is being read by the board of, we're choosing not to act, therefore we don't find legitimacy to the complaint. I would rather you have a motion
This is more formal.
that you don't find legitimacy to the complaint for these reasons. That then gives the staff the information to be able to draft the agenda item when the appellant wants to take it forward.
Okay.
That's the piece that we're missing on our side.
Do we not have this for other things besides the telecom board? I mean,
Yeah, you have it for planning commission, very much works this way.
so whatever works well, why don't we do for telecom?
Well, then a big step in this is the board before hasn't had a response. That would be one thing I'd recommend. The other thing I would ask at this point, because I see it coming, is, this is really, and I hate to say this, because, you know, I do the Freedom of Information Act things for the city, but this is the only board or commission that I can see really violating the Freedom of Information Act, and we just can't do that. I know you're not a governing body under the FOIA, but you are really the only one that's out there doing business on the internet where people can't see it. And so I would hate for it to
In what
develop,
way?
well, such as any conversations on business, and I say this because it's Sunshine Week, it's FOIA Week,
Yeah.
that needs to be in the open, in the public view, such as
For example?
Mr. Bemis sends complaints. Sometimes he, as a citizen, is responded to by the board, and some resolution comes in. Why don't we? So that actually business is
Okay.
happening.
That's
Now,
why I
I
don't
will
respond
say
to those.
it hasn't happened as much. I know when you came on, you had brought that up as one of your first issues.
Yeah.
Like, let's not do this online. And I will say that's drastically been cut down. So there's really few instances where that
Yeah.
happens now. Last year,
So what's the
there was a
concern?
lot
I
of
don't
business
understand the
online.
concern, let's not do this online.
Okay, business needs to be in the public meetings, not decisions made, things brought forward just between board members online. I mean, you can imagine, what if the city council got together online and decided how they're gonna vote on something, and then just show up to be seen at a city council meeting?
Right. And there are always
Yeah.
private citizens involved in those emails, but it's still not sufficient.
You're always gonna be talking to, I mean, you're always gonna be talking.
I
But
think one of the
nature.
things that Lindsley's trying to illustrate is that when there is a lot of complaints, a lot of communication gets blasted out to everyone. In other words,
Everyone being,
everyone on the telecom board,
The
plus
city council,
several other people. If you look at some of the
press,
emails that you have received, there'll be a distribution list under the to field that has 35 email addresses in it.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's not just members of the telecom board or city staff, or it might include one or several city council members, the mayor, other private citizens, and they're just blasted out to a whole bunch of people. But if they're blasted out to all of the telecom board members, and then we have somebody hits reply all, and it goes back to all the telecom board members, and they may say, well, I think this is good, we need to put this on the agenda, or I think this is good, and we need to talk about this, or my opinion is that. Now we've got
Let's
board
do it.
business being conducted via email.
Right.
That's when that happens, is when that starts happening.
that's how boards work these days.
If they're non-government, if they're a government entity, then there's a
NGO,
different
yes.
standard.
But involved with the government, we have the issues of the other.
We have the mayor's open government standard to live up to.
Right. No, but why not just make this stuff accessible? That's what I'm asking.
Oh,
Our emails,
I mean, whatever it is, if it's, I mean,
if we're gonna do that, we'd have to post it on a message board on the city website that's accessible for everybody, and only reply in the message board itself, rather than by private email.
I just think, I mean,
It's still
it would be great to go online
Right.
and see
I
his
don't like
complaints
that.
and see the city's response to his complaints somewhere.
That's separate.
oh, okay.
And then any.
I don't disagree with that, and I think what Blake just said is important. That I see is separate from the process of the complaint process, but it's just how the information is handled.
One is the process of writing a letter and what you're resolving and doing business to get there to say yay or nay to Mr. Bemis.
Right.
The other is the letter that states what the decision was. So it's not decision-making outside of public view.
Right.
The other
Like
issue
if-
that we have to deal with on this is that the law hasn't kept up with
Right.
technology.
Yeah.
And we're running into a lot of issues with that in terms of everything from meeting interaction, from people that are off-site, to keeping of records and things like that. And so that becomes a problem.
But every city's I mean, all the cities are facing it, and everyone's changing and adjusting. We just gotta somehow get a little more up to date.
But we still have to comply with the law.
Yeah.
And
Well,
like
the
if
laws are
Mr. Bemis
changing.
emails a complaint to us, we shouldn't be discussing it there in the email chain. We need to discuss it at the next board meeting and leave it there.
Or there has to be.
Is there enough time
on that
during a
side.
1-month board meeting? What if he's out of town for 1 month? I mean, what if he's out of town for 2 times and so you missed 2 months, you have no, ability to bring it before the board?
No, if it's out there, if it has been emailed to, and this is what the complaint procedure needs to address, if a complaint is emailed to the chairman of the board, it gets added to the agenda and discussed whether the complainant is there or not.
Oh, yeah.
But it needs to be discussed in the public forum and not in the private forum of an email chain.
But the person filing a complaint could have a right of saying, I'd rather be there, would you hold off?
Sure.
Right.
What if I have questions beforehand and he's not gonna be there? Can we follow up via email with that, or is, no?
I don't see why not.
Okay, let's,
Well, the direct email between the member and a member of the public isn't outside this purview, right?
Yeah, it's all gonna be dependent on your
Just
board
like
rules.
this. Yeah.
Boards
Yeah.
can set up rules about how you're gonna communicate. If you
Yeah.
want to, here's the mayor's stance. We wanna conduct business in the eye of the public, particularly when we're making decisions and advisory opinions. Therefore, either, I think a valid criticism of Mr. Bemis is that you're using email and not the actual message boards where anyone could go on and look at it or see the history of it. That's one item that I would encourage the Telecom Board to maybe look at. I'm going to step out because I really only wanted to make those 2 points. And I just want to make sure that you got them from me. One is that we need a decisive recommendation of action. So you are upholding the complaint to move forward for these reasons, or you are declining to advance the complaint for these reasons, so that we have that from a staff perspective. And it's clear that not choosing to vote is not action enough for the city staff to take to the city council. That leaves, in our opinion, the complaint unresolved. Okay, and I think that's kind of one of our issues we're dealing with right now, is that the board is saying, we've chosen not to make any recommendation or motion on this, therefore, we're not really finding any validity to it. I'm guessing that's the assumption.
Right, that's been the
And
assumption.
yet-
my assumption.
And yet, there's not an action that actually says that, right? You're just choosing not to act, which,
Right.
for the purpose of how it works in the city, kind of leaves it out there in purgatory. It's not been finalized one way or the other. So when does the appellant know they can go to the next step? Because your board might change, and next month somebody may bring it up, and you might decide to address it again.
Right.
So that's why we need an action from it. And it's your action, just like in planning commission, once they act on something, it can't come back for a year. It has to change dramatically enough in order for it to come back as a legitimate complaint. So there's certain criteria around how often a complaint can be revisited. You know, I don't know what your rules, I think the point that Mr. Bemis is trying to make is, what are the rules and guidelines? Some boards have them clearly, the council has very clear rules. The planning commission has very clear rules. When they go look at it, they look at findings of fact. Each board sets their rules. Nominating committee just met.
can we look at those? Can we take
Yeah,
a
I'd love to look at
What do you
let's-
look at?
I mean, if other boards have it working already, let's just copy it.
So those are two that are very formal processes. They're the only two that really well, I guess there's a third one, Parks Board, really advances citizen approval processes through the council. So a lot of boards are more advisory. They like to change this policy. They like to do this. They're not handling an actual citizen request.
Right.
And you're one of the few boards that falls into that bucket. It's the citizen request component. And you're going to have it not only with these issues that can be advanced to the council, but the item of content never goes to the council. It goes to the court after you. So that's the other reason it's important that you think about your process, because like the Board of Adjustments, you all have they're very narrowly defined, but you have certain powers that once it leaves you, it doesn't go to the city council, it goes to the court system. And that's about the complaints on the content for the public access channel. What is obscene, what isn't. I mean, you're the body that hears that, not the council.
And it does need to follow the law, so.
Right.
So I think the staff can give you some recommendations on that. My plead out of this is we have an actual motion of accepting or denying and a finding of fact related to that motion that the staff will use, and it will become the staff opinion once the board decides. Whatever the majority of the board decides, regardless of the staff recommendation, doesn't mean they won't see in the packet the staff's original recommendation. So planning staff said we oppose this development. That report stays in the packet. It's just that when it gets to the planning, from the planning commission to the council, the staff recommendation is whatever the commission has decided.
So is there, I mean, could the staff come up with a recommendation for the way the procedure can work? Or do we have a formal recommendation from the staff on how you guys?
I don't have it right now, but also pulling from the planning commission, city council rules, park board, looking at those, what we have in place, how those two things fit together. We can certainly develop something to give back to you that would be able for you to look at and adjust how you might want to feel more comfortable with different parts of it, and then take it to the full board.
And maybe a draft letter where
Yeah,
it
that's
fills
me.
in, so it's,
And you're-
everyone's treated
That
the
finding
same.
of facts piece is important, because there are finding of facts within the ordinance, which is the actual law. And then there's finding of facts within procedure, which is more about appealing how the staff does it.
Well, yeah,
So,
if you
and
guys already do this.
you've had complaints about, really both. The council is the one who determines staff policy procedure, I mean, the procedures about how we operate. That's what went to the government channel policy, and the debate has been what's a policy, what's a procedure. And the other part you might want to look at in this is, are you going to have the same complaint process regardless of whether it's a policy or a procedure, or do they differ in any way because of who they go to?
I think we would just really need a recommendation, what you all think the process should be, and then we can start from there. I mean, just a few page outline of what you guys, the challenges and everything.
I like the idea of a flow chart. We've been trying to do that more, about where does it go and how does it get, decided. And your board is different than other boards in that there are many areas that you're advisory only in nature, and you are totally the formal city body before court on a content issue. So,
Don keeps using the phrase, I think is very important, the board's decision, the board's decision. One thing I have seen over about 15 months is y'all are showing yourself as a splintered board. But, and you might want to pull together and say, yes, this is our decision. And I think a lot of that might go back to, if you really trace, not since I think when you brought it up when you got on, you were saying, oh, FOIA violations. But really last year, a lot of these conversations that go on, and say you disagree with the board, but you're writing as a board member, and you're writing that citizen who you might happen to know, and then you blast the board. Are you acting as a board member, or are you acting as a private citizen who can say whatever they want to? So how is the board being represented? So I think if you have that, we are as a united front, and we believe this, it would really help, I think, the complainants who's out there going, well, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said this, I'm confused, I don't know if my complaint is
Should they get an
resolved.
official response
An
from the board?
official response
From
from
the
the board.
board, and then,
Yeah.
our normal staff report will say, the board found, blah, 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 by a vote of, whatever that vote is. And whatever the majority of it is, that is now the opinion of it. So if someone wants to speak on their own, if any of you individually want to speak on your own, then you're speaking as a citizen, not as a member of the Telecom Board at that point, because the council's going to have that vote, whatever that vote is. I mean, just like on Planning Commission, very seldom, I will say, and this is about your rules, the council has a rule about not really speaking very often in front of the Planning Commission, because they ultimately decide things that come after them. So a lot of them don't want to give undue influence to an item, so they have some rules about when they get involved, although it has happened. The tree thing with Coles, and the alderman spoke on it. But it doesn't normally happen a lot. And it's the same thing about your board. Your board might have rules about, how to articulate. Just like you're going to have rules whether you use Robert's Rules of Order or you don't. The council doesn't adopt, people think they have Robert's Rules of Order, it's a guiding document, but it is not the rules of which they run the meeting by. They have their own set of rules. So those are the kinds of things I would encourage you to look at that are in place with other boards. But we want an action, we want a rationale, and we want a finding of fact. So when you get a complaint, that's the one thing, some of these things I read, I want to go, okay, what is the actual complaint? Is the complaint related to an ordinance violation? Is the complaint related to a policy violation? and then you go through whatever vetting process. The staff, it sounds like in this case, is going to do the first review of it to present to the board, so you'll hear from the appeal and you'll hear from the staff member. I would hope that if they agreed, that the staff would be agreeing to change it before we got to you. We'd be talking to you about the change in practice, I guess. But I've watched 3, and the reason I think this is still open is I don't see an action item that is denying it. Okay? And I don't see the reasons why it is denied. So if I have to go present to the city council, I want the reasons. I want to be able to get it clear from the board, and I'm going to want the vote. How divided was it? Because it makes a difference. When the council sees a planning commission 4-4 or 5-3, or it's a lot different than 8-0 or 9-0 about how they do the complaint.
Right.
So is it, the board's not making a decision, or it's not being captured? Or it's both?
It's an insufficient decision if we don't specifically say that we are denying a request or finding no merit to a complaint.
You're listening to it, you're having public comment, you're going all the way up to the point of a motion to either accept the complaint and make these changes, recommend it to the council.
And that's where it's been stopping right there.
Or
Right.
Okay.
we don't find legitimacy to it. And if you're not finding legitimacy to it, it looks at that point like someone goes, does anyone make a motion? Waits, and no one makes a motion, and then there's no action.
Right.
Versus someone should say, I would like to move that we deny this complaint. My findings of fact are blah, blah, blah.
And it works well in the city planning commission and the city council. It works on there.
We do have a city attorney sitting there to make sure that they give a finding of fact.
Okay.
So someone needs to take that one.
We'll make it.
General counsel for the Telecom Board?
I do want to thank you for being on this, because
Yeah.
I think
Important.
citizens deserve to know the process, and they deserve to need to know when it is ended with people, because they don't know where to go next. And I'm not going to automatically generate an action item to the council without knowing that it has formally been denied. And so they're kind of in no man's land about where to go after that.
Right. I appreciate Mr. Bemis for kind of pushing us in this direction.
Yeah.
The other thing that we do is we are copying, when y'all make all those things, we are copying your minutes to the council, so they'll at least be seeing it at this point. So they know that you haven't taken action on the last couple of times. In fact, I had all of them, ask me about, was there an agenda item on it, and I basically answered, I'm not going to have an agenda item until the request is to come to the council, and then I'm going to come back and say, formally.
And what 3 are these? The 3 things that are outstanding still?
I'm sorry, I was photographing, I wasn't listening.
Oh, no, I was just asking, what are the 3 ones that haven't been responded to?
I think in one way or another, they've all been responded to, just not formally. And I think what Don was referring to is he's watched 3
I watched 3 of your meetings.
3 of the meetings and seen on 3 different meetings. And that whole idea that inaction is an action in and of itself.
Right, but how many complaints do we have right now that are unresolved?
Mr. Bemis? How many of your complaints are unresolved?
That is a question I've never gotten answered because I don't know what resolve is. And but I'm not being facetious. I'm saying that that's why I'm here. Y'all are doing exactly what I'd hoped you'd do. Talk about it, and y'all's questions are the same as mine.
Yeah.
I mean, they really are.
How many
And
complaints have you lodged that have not had any response, formal response of either?
I can think of only one that has had the kind of response that y'all are saying that you would want to take it forward to the council. Y'all haven't had any in the last year, maybe the one for the public access channel. I don't think that ever went to the council, though. But there was never a written response, am I right, Fritz, from the board?
I remember the board issuing a written response on a complaint, and I think you acknowledged this. It was the long-standing complaint from, what was it, 2007 or 2008, of a group of citizens had gotten together, and you brought that forward.
Well, Mr. Morrow remembers that one. That was the forum on forums that actually came from questions generated by the board that they never resolved. Nobody's on the board now. That was...
I don't believe that the last 2 complaints that you have
Yeah.
made have been formally resolved or responded to. I know that one of them was one of those that was, well, we're not taking an action, so that is our action.
Okay, so
The
we
issues
could
form
copy.
had an actual council agenda item.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's been resolved.
But they basically chose not to add issue forms at the last policy thing, and they left it back at the board again on that, because the original recommendation was that you all wanted issues form, I think, Aubrey, am I right? And the council chose not to do that. So when we rewrote the policy, which is the second time that came up, we did not include issue forms. And I think a comment was raised at that time as a potential complaint that issue forms were not within the government channel policies. And I think I specifically addressed that at one of your meetings, that the reason we didn't do it is because the council had acted on it to not include them previously. So if they were going to be added as a recommendation, it needed to come from you as a request to the board to check, to look at that issue change and have them vote on it again. They have not, I mean, no alderman has introduced that at this point.
So what if
I would
we,
recommend, I'm sorry to interrupt, go ahead.
what if we, I mean, you all made a recommendation on what the process you want it to look like, or
Bring it back
whatever.
to this committee.
And then,
Subcommittee.
and then let's take his open complaints and run them through the process and see if it actually works.
That's exactly what I was
And
That'll
then
work.
if,
Where it's
and
at.
then
You
if
have
that
those
works
there.
with the city, then we'll find the holes in it, and then we can adopt a formal process.
Okay.
Thank y'all for reading.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thank you.
So, I'm not pushing you on a timeline or anything. I mean, I assume this is not going to happen within the next 7 days. When is the next meeting? Is it this
Thursday.
Thursday.
Oh, I'm not going to be in town. So assume it happens after this month's meeting, and the city, you forward a copy of the proposed policy, just a draft.
Would you like that to go to this committee, have a committee, subcommittee meeting to look at those, go through those?
I think, yeah,
And then the subcommittee take a formal recommendation to the full board.
I think so.
I think we could probably have something done, ready to go for April's meeting, full board meeting, or
So
maybe,
Then we could set another
So do you think
subcommittee
we
meeting
could,
for
yeah,
sometime
between-
3 weeks from now.
Could we
4 weeks from
start
now.
getting the responses, formal responses for the things that are outstanding?
I don't want to do a formal response unless if we're going to use those, with Mr. Bemis's permission, use those to run through the process as having an outstanding complaint that's ready to be initiated through
I think we
a
just
new
want
formal
those,
process.
see the actual complaint, though, right?
Yeah, I want to see the actual complaints and the city's response to them.
Oh, I hear what you're saying, yeah.
That's what I'm asking for, is the actual complaints and the city's response to them.
Usually it's just an email from,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll
just
pull
the-
those up. I will pull those up.
The active one, yeah, just the I just want to, how soon can we get a response to him? I mean, are we going to be waiting until April, then we get the process in place, then we're 2 months down the road, before we actually respond back?
Well, the question is, do you want to circumvent this process that you're trying to establish by jumping his complaints ahead of this process?
No, I just want to see what the complaints are and what the city's response is so far.
and the board can go forward with
And we-
whatever it wants to respond to this week.
We could bring it. It
It's
could
not going
added.
to be, it should be added to the agenda.
It's
It's going
just
to be
At
on
least
the
a
they
report
are.
from you guys.
Are all of
Okay.
these
Well,
complaints
that
on
and
the
then his
agenda for this
complaints.
month? The open complaints?
No. But
What's
that's
it take to
something
do
that's something else that I wanted to bring to the board to consider, not in this subcommittee meeting, but just FYI, I wanted to bring forward to the board to consider in the administrative rules and such, as this goes forward, how much interaction do you want between city staff and the board chairman in developing the agenda? Because previously and up till now, it's been all from the board chair is the person who's been developing the agenda completely. So what's on that agenda is not determined or in any way by the city staff up to the point of it is at the meeting itself. If city staff felt like it was important to add an item to the agenda, and then it becomes a vote situation and it could or could not be added to the agenda at that time.
Whereas
Yeah.
other boards and commissions, the staff does the agenda.
I
This
think-
is a different one where the chair's been doing it.
I think it would be, for the subcommittee, it wouldn't, I don't know why it wouldn't be a joint effort.
Well, it doesn't make sense to me that the staff would write a recommend, or an agenda for any board.
That's how ours are.
Because I've always done it, as the chairman drafts the agenda, and then the members can amend it as necessary. It's kind of odd that the other boards do it that way. Or it feels odd to me.
I've always seen the flip-flop where the staff draft it and the chairman looks at it and
Yeah,
the
that's
board.
the way it
That's
is.
I've always seen
okay.
the opposite where the staff actually put it together.
And I think the city's probably been, I mean, that's the way Telecom's been doing it for years. But that also gets us into, then it's at the will of the chair, and so then if staff doesn't get an agenda until the day of the meeting, then
Right.
we're butting up against the mayor's desire that there's public insight. I mean, how can the public even know if they want to come to a meeting if they don't even get the agenda ever?
Right.
So that's for
If it's not done by the
That makes
chairman,
sense.
then
So,
if it doesn't go out on time, it's the chairman's fault right now, right?
But it's up to you guys.
Absolutely.
But it's up to you
Depends on
guys.
when you-
I mean,
So,
like Don said, as a board, you write your own administrative rules, and if you want those rules to state that is completely with the chair to develop and publish the agenda, that's within the
Do we-
purview of the
Is
board.
that the
do
current
we
rule?
have to change the rules just for the city staff to work with, I mean, on the agenda?
It depends on what the administrative rules are. I believe at this point in time that I think they do say something to the effect that the chair and city staff collaborate on the agenda. But that's,
I mean, isn't that sufficient? If we, I mean, as far as writing, it just needs to, we just need to collaborate, right?
which goes on now. I think it's
Yeah,
important to
in
have. it come out
collaboration with
earlier
the board and
than
television
we
center
work on
management.
that.
Yeah, I think it, yeah, it would be good to come out early, but, I mean, I
The
think.
agenda has tended to stay about the same the last few years anyway, right?
Well, before I came on board, same items mostly were included. So all we're doing is taking that skeleton and we revised it a little bit because new people came on and saw how we could make it a little more compact last year. But that skeleton's always going to be there. We know that CAT, Govt channel will report. We know that somebody from Education Channel is supposed to report, but we haven't had that in 3 years that I've been there, except early on. And the other things that may be new business or continuing old business are just going to always come up. They'll come up from the staff, they'll come up from other board members, and they'll come up from public comments and actions that we just look at something. So, and this complaint process is very important, and it's true it's never been quite clear, but it's true that the assumption that if the board did not act, then it would fit that. Isn't there a phrase there you're looking at? How's it phrased about if the person is not satisfied, then that person takes the complaint forward to the council. And
depending on the content of the complaint.
right, but it is great if the staff is putting that letter together to make that formal. I think Marvin did those things back in the day, and he's been going so long that we don't remember exactly what he did. And he had Rick, who did a great deal of that administrative stuff. But anyway, there are a lot of concerns down there now, so they have many things that have been going on that they have to change. We've had a lot of building changes, equipment changes, constant new needs, so that's always been a change.
What about the timing of the agenda? I mean, just since that was, we don't have an agenda right now. I haven't seen an email.
You'll have it in a couple hours, I hope.
Oh, okay.
I'm not kidding.
So what we have to do is, we have to follow, once we receive agenda from all the, hasn't been, way far out. We take that, anything that we have received in terms of support material. If it's going to be distributed 7 days out, we at the very least have to have that agenda the Monday prior to
the prior Thursday. In other
Okay.
words,
We can have it.
at the very latest, the Monday of the week before the Telecom Board meetings.
With
Okay.
attachments and all that.
Oh, yeah.
And
Because we
some-
have to get it 6 days. We're supposed to get it 6 days in advance of the meeting.
Well, staff.
And if you're supposed to get it there, and I get a couple of days for my staff to put everything together and to compile everything, then we're hitting up against that. And then I can send it out on the Thursday before my deadline would be send it out the Thursday before the meeting, and that way everybody would have it by the time.
Is the agenda posted online somewhere for citizens?
At this point in time, we've run into, and this is something that I feel that I'm frustrated with, but again, it's an issue of an IT issue and a management administrative issue, is that a lot of the forum and message board tools.
Complaint or feedback, what's in the roadmap for IT to do that?
Well, we just went through this last year an IT assessment.
Right, I have that.
And that, I think that really is.
I didn't see that, I didn't see it in there to have a one-stop shop with the IT assessment.
A one-stop shop for
For
anybody to
complaints.
complain any kind of anything for anything to do with the city?
I mean, yeah, that's pretty much what most cities are moving towards.
575-8300 Paul the mayor's office.
I mean,
really, that's what it comes down to.
that's what it is now, but
Yeah.
it's gonna be online in a year or something, I just wonder how the city's looking to address that. And Lisa, I don't want you to have to answer now.
Well, that would be something, I wish Don was here, because being chief of staff, I know all the departments and he, really got an IT assessment and everything, and I think that's a question for him in terms of what can we afford, where, you know.
The other thing,
this
I think it would
economy.
be very, very supportive is if possibly the telecommunications board, in your role as an advisory board for those issues, might
Recommend.
look at that, have some discussions, and come up with a recommendation for staff, for the chief of staff to maybe, here are our recommendations as the citizen advisory board for telecommunications issues to establish this type of, this very specifically.
That was a- Yeah. Well, that was a call that Justin Tennant, when he was on the Telecom Board, made about 4 months ago, that said, he told the board, here's an IT assessment coming up, it sure looks like a grand opportunity for our board. So, but I don't know that it's gone anywhere there. And let me say, one thing that could help the staff as well, getting the agenda set early on, not only can we help with the public getting that out there, occasionally the law or the processes or whatever also creates the opportunity or the requirement that the staff bring to the telecom board some things. So occasionally that happens, like right now, the education contract, which we're going to bring to the board. Kid has just drafted it, but from a staff perspective, we sure would like for y'all to get it ahead of time from your board meeting so everybody has an opportunity to read things before y'all have a meeting.
Right.
Because in many ways,
And you don't want to spend your time in the board meeting trying to read and digest a
Yeah.
document that might be 25 or 30 pages
Yeah.
long
this one's not.
and
but-
not have an
But
opportunity
the
to
reality
provide a
is,
good.
we haven't had the last education contract with the PEG, wasn't signed. There technically wasn't one. So Kit working
The
with.
education channel?
Yeah, the education channel. Working with the school board, they have processes too that they need to bring before their school board. They would like it to hit before summer hits as well. And so the longer it might take telecom, essentially processes, things need to happen. So what you're doing is essentially cutting out your opportunity to.
Yeah, I think
we
we need to
Right.
receive like a packet before we receive it.
We do. It's just not in time.
Not time to really.
Right, but
And-
actually in time to read it.
Let me address this. There are times that I receive things and assume they've gone on to the rest of the board, then find out they have not. And I think we had that last month. So I should not be addressed without addressing everybody on the board, is my suggestion. In other words, if you send me a document, if you're saying that we need on the agenda, that should go immediately out to everyone. And we should get it to the public as soon as we can. But I'm saying that sometimes I get email or whatever, and it has not gone out to them.
It would go from the staff out.
Right,
in
not
that process.
to me to send
Yeah.
to them.
Right.
And
The
that's
email
what-
should be direct to everybody on the board.
That's what the packet's for.
the packet
Right,
goes
but
to
that's
To
staff.
put the packet together and send it to everybody on the board, and then they have all the
If we have
elements
a
of
week
what
to
they're
look
looking
at it, that's enough time.
But-
So if we have that, I mean, if we have a goal of having the agenda in place 2 Mondays preceding, then the staff has enough time to get it ready by the Thursday before our meeting to actually get it to the members of the board.
And you'll have a
members
full
of the board.
you'll have a full 7 days before the meeting to review.
Because I can totally understand that it would take 3 or 4 days to put together a packet.
It can if we're chasing, and sometimes we have to chase stuff down. I mean, you know, there might be something that is on the agenda that we really want to, you know, that we want to include. We may not have everything, and we need to take, okay, there's pieces here and here, but it all needs to be brought together to a comprehensive whole and put together for that agenda item.
Which makes it good for the staff to send it out rather than you sending it directly to
No,
them.
yes.
You as chair
I should
send
not
it
be
to
emailing him
Fritz.
without
Right.
emailing.
Because it may change, and then, you know, you're busy, work takes over, family and all that, and you don't want to even spend 30 minutes going, which one's the right agenda? You
Yeah.
know?
And we take the staff takes the responsibility of once we receive an agenda, and once the agenda is finalized, there might be a situation where the chair, Aubrey, sends, here's the agenda. I might send an email back to him saying, hey, is it okay if we add this item to it?
Okay, well,
That's
let's
the
clarify
collaboration.
that at this point too. I think traditionally the staff members, that's part of the input. If there's a report that needs to go forward, I don't think you have to ask the chairman. You insert it for the chairman to, and the others to see. And if the board chooses not to consider it for some reason as a group, then they wouldn't. But
So as
we're not going to deny, I can't imagine a board chairman or a board denying to actually consider something from the staff. So,
Okay.
so that should go forward to everyone, and when you know it's going to be on there. And simultaneously, the agenda really is a reflection of compilation of just simply a list of what's going to be on there. And the package you're doing
Right.
is the critical work,
yeah,
and others don't have access to all of it.
So what we need to do is get some discussion going about 15 days in advance of the meeting. And we do this at the end of our regular board meetings. What's something that needs to be on there next time? Like last meeting, I added report of the subcommittee. And I'm not going to be there, but I'll shoot an email out.
One of you guys could please present
Yeah, somebody can just give a short
on this
report.
meeting to the board.
But if you know 15 days in advance what else needs to be on there, and have an agenda, finalized agenda ready to give to Fritz 10 days before the meeting, the 2 Mondays before. I think that's our final agenda. You prepare the packet, and if anything comes up in the next 10 days, feel free to email us and say, hey, this just came up. You might want to consider it this meeting, and we can add it to the agenda at the very beginning.
Or the other question is, if there's an item that comes up, okay, I get the agenda from the chair 10 days before, okay? We're putting the packet together. On the next afternoon, something comes in that I think is really important. Maybe it's a complaint, maybe it's some other document that we hadn't gotten prepared yet, but all of a sudden, hey, this came in, it's good to go. Board should have a chance to look at it. If it's okay with the board and the chair, I can just add that to the agenda, put the information in there, because I think at the beginning of every meeting, you approve the agenda anyway, and if you saw that in there before, I'm saying before I distributed it.
Oh, yeah. I think
So we don't have to get into a big back and forth. I think that's what I was hearing
Yeah.
Aubrey said. We don't have
Yeah.
to get into a big back and forth of, oh yeah, add this, no, don't add that.
Yeah, that's entirely appropriate under our administrative rules.
Okay.
I think.
Well, good. We just need to back up getting that agenda earlier then, and we'll make that happen. I think that's great.
Anything else?
President, since it's the first meeting, sometimes I have found in the mayor's office taking a lot of calls coming in, routing them to different places. Sometimes it might be multi-departmental. Some people who call in, I mean, citizens who call in aren't comfortable saying whether it's a complaint or not. They says, well, I'm not complaining, I just have a suggestion. And if we
Sounds
always
like a
deal
complaint.
with telecom being this, like there's always controversy, always a complaint, there are some people who really want to contribute
But if you buttonhole them into, if you're going to make a suggestion, you're complaining, you're gonna lose a lot of good comments. Now, I don't know if that's on the agenda. Could be, or it could be feedback, or it could be complaints, suggestions, you know.
I think just put that, just put that in the
But
recommendation that you guys have, whatever.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of like what we did in the
Well, we
in the
combined
meeting
it.
agenda.
Well,
We changed it from complaint, suggestions, et cetera, to citizen comment period, or something like that.
We got a national award for our website, and you know, the way we changed that website was pretty much 100% citizen feedback. Saying we wanted to do this, and we did it,
Yeah. Great.
and they were right.
Imagine, the citizens actually know what they want. We used to know it like that, so that's
It's interesting, I had a real conversation with my staff this morning, staff meeting, talking about that very thing, that, you know, expressing to them that our viewership is very sophisticated. And they do understand a lot of stuff,
All right, thanks. I guess we'll look forward to
so I'll work on that.
your report.